Tigers are accustomed to inhabiting vast lands. Consequently, they have acute senses and sharp eyesight. The tiger is a symbol of power. A Chinese zodiac tiger personality, people born in the year of tigers are quite cautious and energetic. They are also determined and persistent, which helps them strengthen their leaderships. Tiger's personality is strong-willed. Once they make up their mind, they will not change it easily. They will never regret what they have said. They are born with stateliness and confidence, so they always impress people with an image of power and authority. They are overconfident in their capability, which makes it difficult to do well in teamwork situations. If their thoughts get rejected, they will realize it in an aggressive way. They are anxious to achieve quick success and get instant benefits, but they are usually frustrated by failures. They love to win, so they tend to argue with people, even on trifles. The tiger is a powerful and colorful species of a big cat. They are native to isolated areas of Asia and East Russia. A tiger is solitary in nature, marking out its territory and defending it from other tigers. In order for it to survive and thrive in its own habitat, the tiger has powerful physical features, from laser sharp teeth to muscular legs. The tiger has good survival skills with strong eyesight, I said. It has large pupils and lenses, which allows it to see clearly in the daytime. During the nighttime, the tiger has a see 6 times more clearly than humans. This is why it will often hunt for prey at night. A tiger economy is the economy of a country which undergoes rapid economic growth, usually accompanied by an increasing and standard of living. The term was originally used for the four Asian tigers: South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong and Singapore. Its tigers are important in Asian symbolism. The associated commonplaces of the tiger are fierce, swift, stealthy, intense, and powerful and dangerous. Some Asian countries would describe it as economic tigers. They are not actual tigers, not their growth economic strength, making them fierce, powerful, maybe dangerous economic competitors, metaphorically tigers. I get a vivid impression of those countries, more vivid than simply describing them as economically aggressive. Specifically, sustained economic growth seems to go hand in hand with a number of factors: flexibilities, emphasis on education, market orientation, and internationalization. Flexibility refers to preparedness of society for the rapid change of the economic structure, the social fabric, and the ideological beliefs, and the political and institutional adjustment that is perhaps a prerequisite, but is certainly conducive to sustained economic growth. Emphasis on education means that willingness and ability to provide the fundings and political support necessary to develop the quantity and quality of human resources that makes a modern economic possible. Market orientation requires a political will to reduce the direct involvement of the government in the economy, and instead to allow for a large private sector an economy to operate without government intervention. Related to the preparedness for changes is the orientation towards internationalization of the economy to develop and expand the holding economic relations of the economy with the rest of the world with it and accept mutual dependency. How often have you traveled to a foreign country and found yourself baffled by all the new and seemingly alien customs and traditions, different ideologies, philosophies, and religions have shaped the cultures in Asian countries for thousands of years. The role of Confucianism have been used to explain the success of the four Asian tigers. This conclusion is similar to the Protestant work ethic theory. The culture of Confucianism is said to have been compatible with industrializations because it values stability, hard work, discipline, and loyalty, and respect towards authority figures. There is a significant influence of Confucianism on the corporate and political institutions of the Asian tigers. There are striking cognitive differences between Asian people and Americans, with Asians more likely to use contextual and dialectical approach to solving the problem. From Taiwan and Hong Kong, the use of traditional Chinese ideas like relationism and middle way, they take the family as a relevant unit of economic analysis and try to measure the economic effect of such values as filial piety, Confucianism style, empathy, particularly and the family as a school of moral education, the importance of family-based decision-making in medical settings, those working on the field of business ethics, the influence of Confucian values on business practices. Confucian values, such as aspect of collectivism, conception of the common good, moral reflection, and empathy, are not pointless in a non-Asian context, but the specific context of such other institutional environments must always be taken into account. Asian countries have grown stronger by selectively learning Western lessons. Western countries could reinforce the performance of their planning and policy-making process in the future by looking eastwards and drawing inspiration from them while acknowledging vital differences. Chinese economic growth and the high pace with which it plans and constructs its infrastructure networks have led to be a renewed interest in its decision-making models and the Confucian values, which are believed to underlie it. What these Confucian values entail, through what mechanisms that they influence organizational and decision-making processes, what their positive and negative sides are, to what extent them permeate transport infrastructure planning in China, and why it is not easy or straightforward to emulate these policy practices elsewhere. The four Asian tigers are the high-growth economies of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. All four economies have been fueled by exports. and rapid industrialization, and have achieved high level of economic growth since the 1960s. The countries that make up the four Asian tigers share common characteristics, including a sharp focus on exports, an educated populace, and high saving rates. The situation of the other two tigers, Singapore and South Korea, appear gloomy as well in general. Singapore and South Korea are both regarded as barometers of Asia Pacific and global trade. Although they are less dependent on China, they are still affected by US-China trade war. These four are not exactly the same in terms of industrial structure and export distribution. As open economies, they cannot be completely immune to the effect of the US-China tariff increases and the slowdown of global demand. Malaysia, Thailand, and Philippines and Indonesia are sometimes referred to as a tiger cub economies because while they have developed more slowly than the four Asian tigers in the decades since the 1950s, they have nonetheless grown at a steady rate. The benefaction of China was a hugely significant factor in four nations. China has gone through an outstanding economic revolution over the past 5 decades, and the four East Asian tigers have been able to take advantage from this beer, the Chinese investment, while being ambitious to make paths of their own. As China and the United States dominated the world economy, being the top two biggest national economies in terms of size, the impact of US-China trade friction will be far greater than what is seen in each individual country. The negative effect of Chinese economic slowdown. The South Korea has a well-developed infrastructure, making it one of the most affluent countries in Asia. Positioned between China and Japan, South Korea is currently working on several free trade agreements, giving business in the country free access to markets around the world. The government heavily promoted foreign investment in the country by offering tax incentives and granted to foreign companies that can make contributions to the economy. They also help companies find and pay for industrial sites and help to cover startup costs. Likewise, free trade adorns decreasing regulation and simplify bureaucratic processes. In the past, during the 1960s, the gross domestic product (GDP) per capita of South Korea was akin with the poorest nations in Africa and Asia. However, in the following 4 decades, South Korea began shifting from an agricultural economy growth by embracing robotics, software development, and electronics. This policy was successful, and as verified by World Bank, the country's GDP grew steadily at 10% annually in the year 1962 to 1995 to becoming an aging economic powerhouse. But currently, South Korea's economy and exports have declined as well. In addition to the decline in demand for electronic chips due to the US-China trade war, Korean telecom companies should carefully select reliable 5G network equipment suppliers. This is considered to be a direct request to South Korea not to use Huawei 5G equipment. The friction between US and China not only brings about the slowdown in South Korea exports, but also made it necessary for companies to choose side. Either side with China or United States. This means that the companies have to abandon doing business with the one side should they choose to side with the other. In addition, South Korea is still caught up in another trade battle with Japan over semiconductor materials. Taiwan's rapid industrialization initially focused on heavy industries such as the manufacturing of steel, electronics, and petrochemical. The proximity of Taiwan to China has provided a leeway for economic growth. Taiwan has prospered in the last 40 years regardless of the litigious association with China. Despite not being a United Nations member due to China's pressure, it is still a noteworthy exporter with a GDP of over $1 trillion, establishing the 23 million people nations as an Asian economic giant. Taiwan might not be our richest tiger, however, it has possibly undergone the most remarkable growth. Currently, the global economy is weakening as a result of the US and China trade dispute, and customers are more conservative when placing orders. Mainland China has contributed to the largest decline in orders, showing that the economic and trade situation there has also slowed. The decline in demand has seriously impacted Taiwan. When customers in this case at the United States, stop importing from mainland China, the impact of the slowdown in demand will be transmitted all the way to the parties at the upstream. As one of the four Asian tigers, Taiwan, with a strong electronic manufacturing ability, will inevitably face the impact of slowing demand. The Hong Kong, because it is considered a special administrative region of China, Hong Kong is in a unique position that allows it to act autonomously in terms of economic and social symbols, but it's subjected to China's political system. Companies that choose to do business in Hong Kong can use it as a point of entry to get into mainland China's developing market. Hong Kong's economic growth began taking off during the 1950s, therefore becoming the first of the East Asian countries. Encouraging tax incentives and inexpensive labor allured many large and mid-sized companies to invest in Hong Kong. Under the 1970s and 80s was a phase of constructions, with public houses, skyscrapers, and rail-user trains being financed by new funding riches. Hong Kong's GDP between 1961 to 1997 grew by 180 times, making the country one of the richest in the world. A supportive regime, lack of public debt, and stringent regulations showcases that the country is placed well for continuous growth, notwithstanding a less impressive rate. A trade war between China and the United States has slowed Chinese companies' expansion activities in Hong Kong. In terms of trade, like Taiwan, Hong Kong is highly dependent on China. One can even say that their economy fortunes are closely tied to China's economy. Furthermore, given China's role as a top producer and consumer in the global economy, any further trade escalation between the US and China will slow the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Due to the close economic and trade relations between Hong Kong and the mainland, under the impact of the US-China trade war, corporate investment into port trade and the overseas expansion of the mainland are becoming more cautious, and this has affected Hong Kong as well. The Singapore may be able to benefit from transfer effects of the US-China trade war, akin to Hong Kong. Singapore's booming economic growth is entrenched in the world of business. Initially esteemed for its tactical position in Southeast Asia and impressive docks, it was effortlessly able to get the most out of it on its reputed as a trade center. Today, Singapore is now among the world's leading money exchange center, and the nation prides itself in exceptionally diverse expat society, which pinpoints of the high volume of overseas investment obtained over the years. Nowadays, Singapore has the highest GDP in all the four tigers. US-China trade relationship is at risk of again spinning out of control into another round of tit-for-tat escalation. Nothing has been done to bridge fundamental differences between the two countries. The risk has been added, not removed, due to COVID-19. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed the possibility for the further deterioration and tied the US and China relationships has become more toxic. The COVID-19 outbreaks in endangering and already flayed US-China trade relationships and the post-pandemic global economic recovery. The pandemic has deepened strategic competition between the United States and China and created economic conditions unstable, unsuitable. China is much more powerful economically and technologically than the Soviet Union, and it is catching up with the US in other areas. That means that two nations could remain neck and neck in a fierce and poisonous rivalry for decades to come. China is the world's largest manufacturer, leading the supplier of intermediate goods to countries around the world, and boasts the world's largest population with an impressive GDP per capita growth rate, making it both a hub and a spoke in international value chains and an impossible market to ignore. On trade conflict between the US and China, this conflict will be reflected in the military dimensions, where tensions favor to escalate into a direct military confrontations between the world's superpowers. The historic challenges for leaders is to manage the crisis while building the future. Failure could set the world on fire. The lack of the vaccine and the fears about the second wave of infection make it unlikely that economic conditions will improve enough in the short times to allow China to fulfill its Phase 1 purchasing commitment. The pandemic has stifled both Chinese demand and US production. Even harder to imagine is the scenario in which growth rebounds to a point where China is able and willing to make up for lost time. Neo-Confucian, traditional and advocate of democracy, has said that the difference between Confucianism and mainstream Western thought is that Confucianism pays attention to the morally independent existence of the individual empathy, while Western thought focuses on the cognitively and politically independent existence of the individual autonomy. Thus, the Asian tries to develop self-improvement of the mind through individual reflection, and Western thought made an effort to set up institutions to ensure that individual rights can be protected and democratic party. The lines of the development appear contradictory, but this apparent conflict can be resolved because a morally independent mind can also realize the necessity of a cognitively and politically independent mind. Politically independent mind can also grow awareness of the importance of self-improvement through moral reflection. Political survey shows that the attachment and Confucian values has increased during the same period that China has modernized. The thousands of experiments in education and social living in China that were inspired by Confucian values. The past of thinking about social and political reform in China, given the importance of Confucianism for understanding Chinese society and furthering the social and political reform rooted in local conditions. I might also suggest questions for research inspired by less well-known Confucian values, such as the idea that listening to different types of music or believing in different views of human nature have different moral consequences during the course of one's life. Social scientists could also help to study whether morality normally improves with age and whether learning's Confucian's classic really does make the rulers more morally sensitive and politically effective. Confucianism will not be taken seriously abroad unless it is practiced by political leaders at home. What is clear is that academics need the freedom to discussion and publish their ideas and adequate funding to carry out research in order to pursue these questions in fruitful ways. Under the right conditions, we could well develop it into a leading center of global learnings, with academic research in question and values hitherto neglected in the West. As we face the biggest challenge of our lifetimes, so we can all the better understanding the crisis. But at this crucial moment, news organizations are facing an existential threat. We risk losing a major source of our fundings. More than ever before, we need support to help fill the gap. How it is possible that Asian countries have remained backward compared to the West for several centuries? Asians can indeed think, but that they have failed to do so for too long, and that this explains their predicament. But as we all know, the tide is turning. The new Asian hemisphere, the irresistible shift of global power to the east. Many Eastern nations have now learned their lessons on modern governance and development from the Western countries. A focus on educational and rational thought, a pragmatic application of free market economics, the development of a stable rule of law, and a strong belief in one's own potential. Asians have been able to emulate the level of prosperity Europe and North America has already known for a while, and yet move on, following their own path. Asian values encompasses some influences of Confucianism. In particular, loyalty towards a family, corporation, and nation. The foregoing of personal freedom for the sake of society's stability and prosperity, the pursuit of academic and technological excellence, and work ethics and thrift. Additional features of Asian values included preferences for social harmony, concern with socio-economic well-being more than with civil, civil liberties, favoring the collective and community welfare over individual rights, loyalty, and respect towards all forms of authority, including parents, teachers, and government. Although Asia is obviously comprised of many territories, impregnated by a variety of strands in philosophy and morality, it should be noted that it is predominantly Confucian values that are credited for economic success of a large share of this amalgam of Eastern countries. For many decades, several Asian countries have been absorbing several Western values, giving them a taste, flavor, and shape of their own. After having been politically bullied for not having adopted key Western values profoundly enough, the time has now come for strong self-reassertions. It was apparently in some combinations of modernist and Confucian values that a mystery of development is to be found. These have higher buildings, more sophisticated IT systems, and more advanced public transport systems than New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, London, Paris, and Rome. Skyscrapers. Building skyscrapers are perhaps only a symbol of power rather than power itself, and infrastructures reflected the period when they are constructed. But as a symbol, both can still be very significant. Self-improvement or reform growth more likely and achievable where the wide gaps are filled between current political and administrative practice and the people's satisfactions. We can give examples for Eastern as well as Western societies. In China, the loss of cultural heritages in increasing deployed. In the course of their economic development, only the most outstanding world-class historical monuments have been preserved, but characteristics cityscapes have largely been lost in the urge to construct modernist and productive urban futures. Most probably, new generation of Chinese will come to deplore this, especially after they have seen how much picturesque picturesque art, art picturesque architecture has still been preserved in Europe. Perhaps higher is not always more beautiful. Respecting and cultivating century-old traditions, as well as the places where they are performed as a vital Confucian values. Has it been lost? Confucianism, Confucian values have come to play an important role. How many theory, how many theorists interpreted morality, discourse, and the practice of politics and policy making? Confucianism has returned fully center the stage since the early 1990s under the guise of Asian values. Respected scholars from various continents have picked up the argument and speculated on the veracity of the argumentation and credibility of its positive qualities for economic development. These words these would entail institutional types with a higher level of meritocracy and trust in authorities, more social welfare facilities targeted at groups rather than individuals, a stronger leaderships, and guiding the role of the government by civil society, a drive towards consensus among the political leaders and dominant business groups, a weaker civil society, and less pronounced checks and balances on the policymaker process for societal order, stability, and justice to adhere to their prescribed law and responsibilities. If people are properly trained and disciplined, they deeply internalize the right modes of behavior, moral code, and rituals, which also generated a more harmonious society at large. The consequence of such training is that they show loyalty and righteousness, even if this is materially disadvantageous to them. Democratic individuals tend to look more at official tasks and competences, encouraging initiative even if not promoted by others or superiors, and check rules and regulations to see whether their actions are in compliance with the law and whether they are judged in similar cases in similar way. Democratic personalists are likely to think that group discussion is better, wiser, and safer than individual decision making. Within close-knit circles of colleagues or business relations, friends, and relatives, decision making is made without extensive group consultations will easily be regarded as offensive. This implies that it can take longer before a firm stance is taken. But once there is a solid collective support, progress can be made very quickly. Effective networks as they made in Confucian countries obviously have pros and cons. Normally the cons are highlighted when Asia is in crisis, as happened after 1997. They lead to tight network of politicians and bureaucrats and business where investment decisions are not made objectively, but based on doubtful friendship service arbitrary economic and social consequences. The mutual trust among participants and the decision-making process is praised and seen as values social capital that reduces the transaction cost of realizing big projects. Tough negotiations can be avoided. The drafting of extensive and expensive contracts may be circumvented, and the monitoring efforts can be kept to be minimized. Social capital is the most effective way to obtain economic and other progress. Some other subway projects we have studied, such as the construction, agents have felt ob- obliged to learn about the from Western values for more than a century. It was a painful process, but it has made them stronger. They boost modern cities and start up the art transport infrastructures, and their size and numbers keep growing. Confusion the idea may again be of help to them to solve policy problems in the coming decade. They were in position to rely on their scientific and technological prowesses, skill, ability, and this has benefited them for centuries and has made their ideas and values a big attractors for the world. Unfortunately, overconfidence in their own capabilities and growing attention to what makes the individual special and independent and what satisfies their immediate needs has weakened and coherence and bonding the force of their society. The belief in societal self-improvement to improve their through through joint collective action would need a major boost to achieve this. Perhaps Westerns can learn empathy from Asians, the way Asians have learned knowledge from them. I will contact you as soon as I arrive at airport. See you soon. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.